What's new, 802? I'm Becca Hammond, and you're listening to Vermont Talks. Vermont Talks may include graphic or explicit content. Listener discretion is advised. James Cross, welcome onto the show today. I'm going to read your 3 accomplishments or details to introduce the guest. That's what I call these things. You are a tour manager, a production manager, and a merchandise manager. You're the owner at Bandhive, which is a podcast and, do you call it a consulting firm for artists?
I wouldn't go so far as to call it a firm. I'm a coach or a consultant to artists, but I don't have a team working for me at this time. So something along those lines.
Team of one.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're also the owner and producer at Pinnacle Pro Sound.
Yes, indeed. And thank you so much for inviting me onto the Vermont Talks show.
Yeah, I've been meaning to invite you on the show for a couple years now, actually, because you're one of the first people I stumbled upon that actually had a show in Vermont. There's not a lot of us.
Yeah, it's a small number and a small community, which is, we were just talking about Rustin and his band Nerves, and we're like, wait, we both know Rustin.
Yes, I think there's a lot of people that are, as I've been doing the show, I've been meeting more and more people, and they all seem to know you, which just makes me want to talk to you even more.
That's really funny because I don't know that many people because I wasn't in Vermont for like 5 years. I moved back a few years ago, but I was gone for quite some time between college and living in California for work after that.
Well, let's talk about that. So, as the first question says, tell me about yourself. So where are you from originally?
Originally from New Jersey, and I moved to Vermont when I was 11, which was 18 years ago. And then at 18, moved out for college, came back for summers, blah, 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 moved to California and stayed there for almost 3 years, 2016 to the end of 2018. So yeah, almost 3 full years. And then my dog was 14 and not doing so well. So I came back. I was like, okay, I need to be with my dog. And I was like, oh yeah, Vermont's pretty badass. I'm going to stay here.
Vermont is pretty badass.
Yeah. And it's a lot cheaper than California.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Depending on where you were. Where were you in California?
LA, then San Diego, then Eureka. And Eureka was pretty cheap, but it was also beautiful scenery, difficult area to live in. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
What was the hardest thing about it? Because I am someone who has never left, so I'm curious.
So, a couple things. First of all, it's very isolated. You're 4 hours from San Francisco, 7 hours from Portland. So for someone like me who loves going to shows, it's very difficult because you're not even on the interstate. You're on 101, is it? I think it's 101. And so it's just like back roads. It's like if you're going to drive 4 hours on Route 7 is basically what it is. And it's beautiful scenery, but there also just is a very different vibe from what I've experienced in my life. And there's nothing wrong with the people there. It's just not the vibe that I was into or my partner at the time was into. Like, she didn't feel safe riding the bus, and it was just tough to be there.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Okay.
Which is funny because like a big city like San Diego, we were both fine with, and we're like, okay, like not everyone here thinks the same way we do. That's fine, but we were never scared in San Diego or really LA, aside from the time we heard gunshots.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think anyone would be afraid of that. But then in Eureka, it was like, yeah, she didn't want to ride the bus at all, and she doesn't drive, so it was.
Yeah, that makes it very hard to get around.
Yeah.
Yeah, understandable.
And she's back out there now, so clearly she got over it. But and like I said, it is a beautiful area. Like it's.
Yeah, well, so it must be Northern California, 4 hours. I'm assuming north of.
Yeah, it is.
San Francisco, San Diego.
San Francisco.
Everything's San over there.
It is San Jose, San Francisco, San Diego, San Clemente. There's probably more.
And it's so much bigger. I just try and imagine how many Vermonts you can fit into California.
Oh, yeah. It's like Maine down to Virginia is like California.
Right. That's just so huge. It's so big to me. I can't, it hurts my little brain. My Vermont brain can't fathom the distances when people talk about that.
Yeah. It was, so we drove overnight from San Diego up to Eureka, and it was, I want to say about 14 hours with like a dinner stop and stuff. So it would have been 12 if we just went straight through. But we specifically did it overnight to avoid traffic. Yeah. So with traffic, it would have been like an 18-hour drive. It would have been awful. So we had to go through LA and Oakland outside San Francisco.
Yeah, I've heard nothing good about LA traffic. Just nothing good.
Yeah. Even at like 8 p.m., it was, I mean, the first time I ever drove in LA, and we're getting so off topic here. The first time I ever drove in LA, I went out there and they're like, hey, so we need to make sure you can drive the van. So go ahead and get in this 15-passenger van, which I had never driven a 15-passenger van before. It was an E350, and get on the interstate. And I'm like, I've never driven in LA, let alone on the interstate in LA. You'll be fine. Okay. And I was fine, but it's
like a bus.
A little
too.
like, throw me into the deep end, why don't you? Like, can we take a car first? And like, once I've done that, I'll upgrade. Nope, you get in the van.
Yeah, 15-person. Gosh, those things are huge.
Yeah, I love driving them now. Like, that's
right. Well, once you get used to it, sure.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. So, California here, started in New Jersey. If you were 11 when you moved here, you're pretty native Vermonter, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, they would still call me a flatlander for sure.
But. Well, yeah, depending on who. Your friends will 100% always call you a flatlander.
Most of my friends are not from here, so they've been here for like 2 or 3 years. I'm like, you're the flatlander now.
Right. Oh, that's funny. Okay, so how long have you been producing and what inspired you to get into the field? Because I'm guessing that you've been doing music related things for a while.
Yeah. 2008, 9. I was 15. So it was 2009, right before my birthday. I started interning at a radio station because I loved music. And my dad found out this was at WGDR, which was part of Goddard College in Plainfield. Now it's its own thing. And my dad said, hey, you can go have your own radio show. And I thought, I'll be the cool kid. I wasn't the cool kid. I was homeschooled. I played metal in a city where everyone listens to country and all that. And not even like classic metal that, people would appreciate. It was like Warped Tour, kind of metalcore, punk, and that kind of stuff. And I loved it. And I had no intent of going to college either. But at that radio station, they sometimes had live music. And they said, hey, do you want to learn live sound? I said, absolutely. That sounds fun. So I started doing live sound for them. And over the years, I traveled around a bunch when I was like 16, 17, going to concerts with friends all over the country. The first time I went to California, I flew out for an AFI show. It was like their first hometown show in 10 years. It's like, I want to go to that. And I went to that. My parents were super chill and we had family out there. They said, yep, you can go. So I, took up like all my Christmas money and was like, I'm buying a plane ticket. And I went.
Nice.
And it was amazing. And it's so worth it. But I also at the time had made some friends in Boston. And one of them said, hey, one of my former high school classmates is going to this school called Bay State. They have an audio program. You should check it out. So I checked it out and I liked Boston. I liked audio. I said, you know what? Let's do it. So I ended up in school and originally I wanted to do live sound and tour management because at the like medium club level, so we're talking anywhere from 500 to 1,000 capacity typically, a lot of the front of house engineers are also the tour manager. There's just like, small tour, you try to double up where you can.
Yeah.
And especially for even smaller tours too, like that'll happen. But like probably 1,000, 1,500 is the biggest. And mainly it's that 500 to 1,000 because below that, bands can't always afford crew and all that.
Right.
So I went in with the goal of doing that. And then I ended up touring for a few years. And I did a bunch of production while I was there. And then I did some touring. And I never toured doing sound, but I did tour as a tour manager and a merchandise manager and various other things. And then I was in California, met a girl, didn't want to tour anymore, blah, 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 blah. And took 2-ish years out of music entirely. Actually, no, it was 1 year. Because then I started interning at a studio called Signature Sound down in San Diego, which is where parts of Blink-182's album Enema of the State were recorded. So that was their claim to fame. Newfound Glory, Switchfoot, because they're from San Diego. A bunch of really cool bands who, this was like, 20 years ago or 15 years ago at the time, would come through. And for us, mostly it was smaller names, but we did have some cool bands come through, like Revolution came through, which is a big reggae band. We had a Killswitch Engage side project. Nice. I don't know why they came to San Diego because they're from Massachusetts, but they were there one day. So that was cool. And that got me back into music. So then when I quit my job in San Diego, I launched my own business, which I'd always kind of like dabbled in except for that break. And that's when I started doing mixing and mastering and that kind of stuff. And after a while, I started running a blog for my studio.
Yep.
Because people were always asking me questions. And then at a certain point, I thought, you know what, this should just be a separate thing because people are asking so many questions. And so that's how Bandhive kind of came around. There's a different name originally, which I'm no longer allowed to say. There was a legal incident.
Oh, no.
Nothing terrible.
Now I really want to ask. Sad.
We can talk about it afterwards.
Okay.
But it's now Bandhive and has been for almost 2 years.
Nice.
And so we do consulting for artists who want to go on tour. And obviously Bandhive is Bandhive, all one word, because it's a hive for bands to talk about what they're doing, like their business. And now that's essentially my primary focus, just because it's so fun. Like talking to artists all the time about, hey, this is how you do the thing. And then seeing the ideas connect in their head and helping them go through difficult situations and all that kind of stuff. It's just really fun. And so I still mix, I still produce, all that kind of stuff, but it's very rare because it's so time consuming to do that.
Yeah.
And as fun as it is, I just love live music. So that's why now going back to Rustin and Nerves, I just reached out to them. Like he said, they're doing a show. I said, do you need help? And that's the kind of thing I do. I'm also, my friend Vincent has a studio down in Randolph called The Underground, which he now has a live performance space called The Underground Listening Room.
Cool.
So anytime there's a full band show there, I'm the front of house engineer for that. And it's like a little 50 cap, or 49 technically speaking. But we've had some really fun shows in there, like Drama Dolls came out from LA for the grand opening. And we had Cancel Vulture from Brooklyn on that show as well. And we've had Solstice, which is a Vermont band there. Like just a bunch of really cool bands. We had Jesse Taylor Band last 2 weeks ago, I guess now. And it's just a really cool space. And it's the kind of thing where like, it doesn't pay much, but it's just fun. So I do it, like that's the thing. I love live music. I love music. And as cool as it is to kind of shape a song in the studio, it takes so much time. By the time you're done, you're sick of the song. Like, I don't like that experience.
Yep.
So yeah, that's why I'm all in on Bandhive. Like logistics, I can nerd out about that forever and not get bored of it. And then I can combine that with like the live production aspect. And especially if bands are going on tour, that's the stuff they want to know about is like, how do we do XYZ for our live show?
Yep.
So it's also keeping me, involved in the industry as I'm talking about it.
Cool. So how often are you doing episodes, and are they always interview episodes with Bandhive?
We've released an episode every week since December of 2019. And these days, mostly solo. At the start, I had two amazing co-hosts. Aaron Gingras, who now lives down in Barrie. He's in the band Suburban Samurai, who's from around here. And Matt Hose, who lives out in Colorado. I met him when I was on Warped Tour, and his band is alive in Barcelona. So Aaron had to step aside, unfortunately, for some family issues, which Matt had to as well, but he's now back. Our first episode with him back is being released on, I believe, September 28th. So super excited to have him back, and I don't like talking to myself. And so in the interim, we've done a bunch of interviews. I've done a bunch of solo episodes, and after kind of informally polling our listeners, some people like one, some people like another. So I just said, okay, we're going to give you a little bit of everything. Like we'll have some interviews, we'll have some solo episodes, and we'll have some co-host episodes. And that way kind of appease everyone, give people variety. Because the one thing I've noticed is the solo episodes have the same content, but it's like 10 to 15 minutes instead of 45 minutes.
Right.
So that's really good as opposed to a co-host episode. But a co-host episode has some banter, it has some back and forth. Like Matt and I know each other really well. We've known each other for at least 7 years now. And I have someone to bounce terrible band puns off of, which is like my thing on the show. I can't do that if I'm just talking to myself. And then interviews, they could be just me or they could be me and Matt. And that's just cool because it gives somebody else's perspective. So even if it's something we've already covered, we can go back and rehash it, see what they would do differently or what they would do the same, or if we're crazy for suggesting something. Like, we've both done it, but maybe it's not the best way. We did an episode about that where it was discussing, hey, people love to say this is the one way to do it in the music business.
Yeah.
And we say that too, but that's almost never true. Like, we
Right.
can only give you what we think is best, and this is our experience. But if you come up with something better, let us know.
Yeah, it's always a learning curve. And that's part of having a co-host, I'm sure, is having that kind of conversation. Because if you make an outline for a show and you speak the outline and you present your ideas, it's very flat. And I mean, you might be the kind of person who could be like, oh, wait, I just thought of this random other idea and I'm going to debate myself about this concept for a minute. But you can't easily do that. It's not very natural to be like, no, never mind. I'm a counterpoint to the thing I just said.
You're absolutely right about that. I have been posting clips to TikTok, and I'm like mini TikTok famous. One of the coolest things happened a few weeks ago, I guess. I went to a friend's birthday party, and we're just sitting there playing board games and stuff, and this guy goes, "Do you do band tips on TikTok?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "I know you." And that's never happened to me before. Just somebody out in the wild. He's not even in a band. He's just seen me, and he's like, "I know you." That was so cool. But I did a video once about how if bands don't move around on stage, the audience is going to be bored. Yeah. And someone literally commented and said, "You sound really bored while you're saying that." It's like, okay, I need to work on my energy for the solo episodes.
They kind of called you out a little bit. Yeah. I can 100% appreciate that. It's really hard to be kind of energetic and excited when you're the only one talking.
Yeah, exactly.
I've tried doing that stuff. I've made YouTube videos and things before, and I'm like, I am so monotone. I'm sorry. I apologize.
It's funny. That's how the podcast started, was I was doing YouTube videos, and I hated doing YouTube videos because I did not like talking to myself on camera. Mm-hmm. Here we are, 3.5 years later, and I'm talking to myself on camera.
Yep, but I know how that goes.
Yeah, and it's totally different now because I'm not editing it the way I would edit a YouTube video. It's just a podcast that has video with it. And obviously that's only if you go to YouTube. If you go to Spotify, Apple, whatever, it's all just audio. But it's just a very different vibe. I'm not focusing on so much the production of like, oh, I'm going to have a transition here. I'm going to have text there. Like literally just me talking to a camera, or me and Matt, or a co-host or whatever. Or a guest. Matt is the co-host.
Right.
Matt, I'm not cheating on you, don't worry. Unless Aaron comes back, in which case it'll be the three of us. But anyway. So yeah, I am right back where I started, except it's a little bit of a different vibe. And I'm also doing slightly longer form content. When I was doing YouTube videos, it was like 2 to 3 minutes each because I just could not bring myself to do anything longer and then edit it. And it was such a process. I hated it.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot to video editing, and it's so hard to keep it engaging. Yeah. I feel like I could make a 3-minute video that was engaging, but when I was trying to make a 10-minute video, it was so boring. I'm sorry, people.
Yeah, so now what I do is I use an app called Descript, and all the edits are in there. If it's a co-host episode or a guest episode, I have an editor take care of it because that's a longer episode. If it's just me, it's like 10 to 20 minutes. I'll cut it up myself. But either way, it's in Descript. And then once the edit is done, I go back in and I just listen and find between typically 10 and 14 clips that are, like 15 to 45 seconds long, and just cut those out and put them on TikTok. And so all I have to do is crop them to be vertical and it's done, So it's very easy to do. I can do my social media for a week in about an hour for the clips and then an hour for scheduling it. And that's between TikTok, Instagram Reels, and that's about it. I do one post a week on Facebook just to keep it alive, but it's mainly TikTok and Instagram Reels.
Cool. So give us an example of your favorite episodes that you've done on your podcast.
Oh, that's a very good one. And the first one that comes to mind, I believe it's number 48. Apologies if I'm wrong on that, because I just recorded 150 the other day, so there's a lot. Nice. 48, if it's the one I'm thinking of, is with Howie from Ballyhoo, which for over a decade has been one of my favorite bands. They were on Warped Tour one of the years that I was on Warped Tour. I don't think they remember me from that. But during the pandemic, they were doing some really amazing high production value live streams with they rented out a rehearsal space in a sound and lights warehouse. They had the lights going. They did like 4 of them. And so we had Howie on the show to talk about that. And that was really fun. So if it's not 48, it's in the 40s. It's somewhere around there. But you can also just search Bandhive, Howie Spangler, Ballyhoo, and it should come up. And yeah, so that was really fun. Episode 100 was really special because it's number 100. But Matt and I actually went in and just talked about music for the whole, like, probably a little over an hour that we had.
Cool.
And just because we realized we never shared, like, tidbits here and there, like, oh, we listen to this, we listen to that. But we just wanted to do a breakdown of our top 10 albums. And we also set a record for references. My poor editor, Leland, one of his jobs is to put down every reference we make to a band, a song, an album, a person, a company, anything.
Nice. I mean, it's really good that you do that. That's so much work, though.
It was over 250 references in 1 hour.
I was doing that for myself when I first started this show, and I just couldn't. It was too much.
Yeah.
I couldn't do it.
If you need an editor, I can send Leland your way.
Maybe someday. I can dream.
Yeah. No, he's great. He nailed it with those references, and I then had to go back and get the links to all of them. So it was to my own detriment as well. But that was just a really fun episode to do.
Yeah, very cool. That's so cool that you've kept up with it. Have you had any trouble? For me, I run into the scheduling issues because mine's always interviews with people,
right.
And I try and keep it local too, which. Part of me wants to be able to do remote interviews, but part of me just does not want to bother with it because it's so much easier if you can control everything right in front of you. I end up just struggling so much to keep that consistent schedule, though. Have you run into scheduling problems, running out of ideas, any just,
scheduling
brain cramps?
Yeah, scheduling problems, absolutely. Just because, we interview people from all over the world. And some artists are just artists and they don't keep a calendar. They just kind of show up when they want. And so there have been times where we had an interview scheduled and the band just doesn't show up. And, if it's someone I know, I'll give them another chance. If it's somebody there's one publicist who has sent out some great artists our way, but also some really flaky ones. She's like, yeah, sorry, I'm not going to try again. We wasted time on this. So scheduling, definitely. And that was part of the reason that I stopped doing interviews all the time. Because when Matt first left, I just lined up interview after interview, which was really interesting. But at the same time, it doesn't have the rapport of the co-host episodes, but it doesn't have as much information as the solo episodes because it's just banter oh, where are you from? Blah, 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 blah. Mm-hmm. And so it's more of focused on the band rather than how that band's knowledge can serve the listener.
Right.
And so as much as I love doing interviews, especially Ballyhoo was amazing. It's tough. And that's actually another episode we did was, I believe, 43 or 44. We had Aaron Zimmer from Least of All Records, which is spelled Leesta, Leesta, space Vall, Vol, but it sounds like Least of All.
Right.
And they do really cool vinyl pressings where each one is unique. It's just it's lathe cut vinyl.
Yep.
And I heard of them through a Vermont artist called Troy Millette, and he did that. And I think I've been seeing Facebook ads too. I said, hey, this is really cool. We should have this guy on the show. And that was really fun because it was talking about what they do to serve the artist. And so we're, kind of giving them some free promo. But it was just really fun to see how their company runs and how artists can benefit from that. So that was also a really fun one. And so maybe, I guess the idea for interviews is I have to find more industry insiders rather than other artists.
Right.
But, we'll see how things go. Right now, I'm happy with where the podcast is at with solo episodes and Matt coming back sporadically here and there. But if the right interview pops up, I'm definitely not going to say no.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Have you had a lot of people reach out to you because of your show?
Yes. A lot of people more on social media where they see it first, like a little clip or something, and then they want more. I don't see the podcast as a source of new leads or growth or anything like that. I see it more as a way to nurture people who already know me. So they know what I do. They want to learn more. They have a question. I say, yeah, here's the answer. If you want to hear a full podcast episode about it, go to number 23, and we discussed that. And so then they can listen to it and come back if they have questions that weren't answered in the episode and that kind of stuff. And then, of course, a lot of times they subscribe and they keep hearing more content. So I would say no, not so much that they find the podcast and then reach out, more so that they reach out and I send them to the podcast. I've definitely had that happen, though, where somebody is just like, hey, I love listening to the podcast. I'm like, I have no idea who you are. That's amazing. Thank you. So it's happened, but usually it's more from social media.
Nice. Very cool. I can't even imagine how hard it is as someone trying to go out on tour. Like if I had no idea, which I don't have an idea, and I was like, I'm going to go on tour today. Yeah, that might go badly for me, to be honest, because
that's how most bands do it. They just say, we're going to book a tour, and they book some shows, and they start driving. And it's like...
Right, like that's what I would do. I'll call a place, like, can I play at your place? Cool.
Right. And I remember...
Now I'm on tour, right?
Yeah. I went on tour, just a weekend tour, with a band called Better Things, who are from the Burlington area. And you know Brian, I think, right?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. So we went on tour. It was supposed to be 5 shows over 5 days. It was 3 shows over 5 days by the time we got through it, because the venue in Boston literally closed permanently the week of the show, and another show just didn't happen. And yeah, so driving back, the last show was in Plattsburgh, so it was close to home, and we're like, okay, we're just going to drive home afterwards. I'm sitting there on the laptop crunching numbers, like, hey, your tour was profitable. And they said, wait, what? That's the first time we ever made money. I said, well, how much did you lose last time? They said, oh, well, we never tracked that before. So it's like, okay. And, nothing but love to those guys. Like, it was just the experience. I love telling that story because it's like, this is why you have to keep track of stuff, because maybe you were making money the whole time and you could have been touring a lot more because you were making money on tour, Right. Obviously, that's not counting day jobs and that kind of stuff. Which is also, that was the only time I've ever played on stage. I filled in for their bassist, Quentin, because he was at basic training, no pun intended. And so I did those 3 shows plus one more like a month later with them filling in on bass. And I broke Quentin's tuner pedal. I feel bad.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it was like the cheap plastic tuner pedal that you look at it and it breaks. So I was
excuses.
Like, he should have bought the good one.
Nice. Very cool. Okay, so we are already over 30 minutes, which is amazing. Normally, I run out of questions or ideas, but I already have many other questions.
I can talk for ages. I apologize.
No worries. I just need heads up if we're going to do a 2-hour episode.
Okay.
So, Pinnacle Pro Sound. Where is this located exactly? I did not snoop enough so that I can pull out your address.
Well, so it's in my home. It's just all remote. So if I want to produce something, I would team up with Vincent at the other... I can't talk. With Vincent at the Underground, the studio I mentioned earlier.
Gotcha. Okay.
Perfect timing. I stabbed my tongue with a bagel this morning. I don't know how I managed that, but it's like my tongue is swelling up. So I'm doing my best here.
I also have a mouth injury today, so we're both in pain. I think I burned myself at Henry's earlier.
That's no fun.
So, no worries.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's Pinnacle Pro Sound. Is I do the mixing and mastering at home. If it comes to production, either it's remote or I would suggest a local studio, which, because of the pandemic, I haven't done any production in like 3 years.
Gotcha.
So it's been mostly mixing and mastering, or exclusively mixing and mastering during that time.
So, I'm way too far away from the mic, see? Do you do live sound recording, or is it mostly just live sound mixing for the actual production quality?
Yes and no. So at the Underground, we have the capability to record. Vincent handles that because it's part of his studio setup, and then the venue's in the next room. So I'm in the venue mixing on an iPad while he's in the studio making sure things are recording. And that's only if the band requests it. And so he'll just check in on it once in a while. But I have done recordings in the past. Like, we didn't record that one. That was stupid. Troy Millette and his band, The Fire Below, did a great set at the Fairfax Party Out of the Park 2020, because it was pandemic. And so they played a great set there. We didn't actually multi-track that one, but the next year Jesse Taylor Band played, and we multi-tracked that. And back when I was regularly the production manager for shows down in Boston, we recorded every single show. It was we just made that part of our policies, like, hey, we want the artist to sign off on this, and they never said no. So we had bands like the Venetia Fair come through, Trophy Wives, Sparks the Rescue, Transit, but that was before we had a multi-track capable board, unfortunately. That would have been really cool. Like Transit in Boston in, I think at the time it was a 95 cap. Like that would have been insane because, and now they're broken up. So, oh well. So did actually all the bands I listed have broken up except for Sparks the Rescue, who broke up and then came back and broke up and came back. So I don't know where they stand right now. But all the other bands I listed broke up.
It happens.
Yeah. It makes me feel old.
Let us not talk about that because it's astonishing how old I feel when I think about things that were popular. Like everything is 10 years old now that I think is like not 10 years old. Like I'm getting old.
Well, so here's a distraction. The last band I did a live recording for before the pandemic was No Small Children, which is they played a hay barn in Randolph, which was really fun.
Nice.
And that, for those who don't know them, that is the band that redid the Ghostbusters theme song for the new one where it's all women, because they're all women. And so that was a really fun show to work, and recorded that. And their drummer, Lisa, is also their engineer. So I just sent her the files. I don't know if they ever released it or anything, but I did like a little home mix of my own. I was like, yeah, okay, that's going on my iPod. Like,
nice, cool.
Everyone was just having a great time, and they had some local kids from Randolph come out and play, I think it was sax and trumpet. I can't remember exactly, but some kind of brass instruments. So that was really fun. And, but after the pandemic, I've only been doing stuff down at Vincent's, really, because I like other shows in the area. It's either Higher Ground, which...
Yep, pretty much. Or some DIY show.
Right.
Something really small. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's the nice thing. Like, we can do it at Vincent's because it's in his studio. Like, if it weren't a studio, it wouldn't happen. Unless I brought in a whole recording rig, which at the Hay Barn show with No Small Children, I have many regrets because it's a hay barn. My laptop was filthy by the end of the night. Like, I got home and there was like an inch of hay dust. And somehow it survived. It was a 2011 MacBook Pro. It's still going strong.
They're bulletproof, that generation.
Except for the graphics card. I'm on the 4th graphics card.
You may abuse that.
Yeah, which actually I gave it to my dad. I got an M1 last December, and it's amazing. So I gave the old one to my dad because he was whining about how I convinced him to get an iPad instead of a new laptop. So it's like, okay, here's the laptop. You can watch Netflix, and it has a CD drive, which is what he wanted. No one makes a CD drive laptop anymore.
Yeah. I don't think they're easy to find by any means.
Yeah.
Certainly not a Mac, but...
Right. Oh, he doesn't like Macs. I just...
That's just what he got.
I was like, it's this or like $500. So just take this one.
Nice. Okay, let us plug some of your things. So,
okay.
Would you like to plug your things? I can read some of these. TikTok at MadRockXVX.
Yes, that's X-Ray Victor Charlie.
X-Ray Victor Charlie. Okay. Wait. XVX?
No. So, funny story. I do that on my own show. It's X-Ray Victor X-Ray.
I was going to say, wait, hold up. We're going to confuse people here.
I did that on an episode of Bandhive. And I got to the edit and I was like, what on earth was I thinking? What? It's X-Ray Victor X-Ray. Next episode, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to say X-Ray Victor Charlie. Get to the edit. I said X-Ray Victor Charlie again. What is wrong with my brain?
Do you re-record? What do you do? Because I have had to re-record my own wording. So I'm like I have to say it correctly.
Typically, I find a creative way to cut it out. I'm also very good when I do Bandhive. Like, if I say something and I don't like it, I just re-say it instantly.
Yeah.
And then my editor knows to go back, or if I'm editing, I just cut it out. It's super easy. It's different when I find something after the fact, especially now that it's a video podcast. I can't go back and like change my clothes and all do that. I mean, I could, but I'm not going to.
Right, and it's not going to fit well anyway, no matter what you do.
My hair's going to be a little different. And,
right, and it's just going to like glitch a little for a second.
Yeah.
People are going to be like, what on earth?
I mean, it's all jump cuts anyway. Like that's just because we don't like do transitions or anything. We have fades, but we don't like have graphics. B-roll graphics. Like we don't do that. So yeah, if I say something wrong, you know, I'll just like when I messed up talking earlier because of my tongue, I would just say it again and not even think about it.
Let it be.
Right. But knowing that you don't edit the podcast to that extent, I'm like, hey, let's make this a funny thing, and I can talk about how I stabbed myself with a bagel. It was toasted for the record. That's why it was sharp.
I managed to burn myself on eggs Benedict. It might have been the bagel. Or not the bagel, English muffin.
Yeah.
Similar, not quite the same.
Those are pointy. They have, when you tear them instead of cutting them. Yeah.
Like it gets pointy when toasted. I feel like I have cut myself on a bagel before because of the toasting.
See, for people who have gluten intolerance, which is not me, I don't know if it's you, that is bread's karma. For us, bread has to get creative and stab us or burn us.
No, I have IBS, so fucking bread. Bread's trying to kill me all the time, every day, all the time.
It's Dave's killer bread.
Seriously, like such good bread hurts.
Yeah. You ever take a bite into what was yesterday a really good baguette, and today is like the driest, crunchiest thing, and it just hurts?
Yeah, I was gonna say that just sounds like your gums are bleeding.
Yeah,
so instant.
I haven't had a baguette in
but fresh,
ages.
So good.
It's the best.
So good. That's what you have to remember, not the pain of the day the next day. Okay, all right. So we'll try that again. TikTok at MadRockXVX.
Yes, as in X-ray, Victor, X-ray.
And your Instagram is exactly the same.
It is. I'm not going to say it again because I'll mess it up.
Okay. And your band site, or your band site, your podcast website is bandhive.rocks.
Yes, that's .rocks instead of .com. The .com was $3,000, so I said we're gonna spend $20 and get a .rocks because it's music related. And so yeah, bandhive.rocks is the website. If you want to get to the podcast directly, you can go to bandhive.rocks/podcast. But even if you go to the main site, there's a big podcast button right there. And
I bet if you search for Bandhive on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all of those lovely podcast delivering apps, services, you will find your podcast.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Anything else that you would like to share today?
I feel like I rambled a lot, so if you don't have questions for me, I think let's leave it at that because people are going to be tuning out from hearing me talk and talk and talk.
Are you going to write a book someday with all of your different ideas about how to be a successful touring band?
It's tempting.
I feel like you could.
I probably could. But here's the thing. Touring changes so much so quickly, especially when you have like a global pandemic and all that. But looking back, you know, things that artists were doing 10 years ago are now like bands with in-ears. 10 years ago, you wouldn't have an independent band using in-ears. Now, every band worth their salt is using in-ears because they know it helps them put on a better show. So this is, maybe I'll get into a little bit of a rant here.
Go for it.
There's a lot of artists who will look down on any technological progression or anything like that and say, oh, that's cheating. It's too easy. It's like, playing the music, why not make that easier? You're still good at your instrument. You have to be able to sing, but you can protect your ears. You can put on a better show. You can be a better entertainer. And that's what people are paying for. They're not paying to see somebody be super authentic. Like, okay, cool, you can do that, but it sounded awful. So if you can sound much better and showcase your skill and put on an entertaining show, why not do that? Why not use technology? So like, you have a 4-piece rock band, right? Yeah, you have 2 guitars, 2 vocals, a bass, and drums. You take that, the sound is pretty thin. Like, that's just a fact. Like, you're not going to have a super full sound. Or let's take away one guitar and say it's 4 people, singer, guitar, bass, drums. Okay, whatever. Like, it can sound good live. But unless you're really amazing at what you do, there's going to be holes in that mix. Add in a laptop and some backing tracks, just to add in a second guitar, let's say. Some synths, maybe. Just, you're not replacing anybody on stage. You're just saying, we don't have the budget to bring an orchestra with us, so we're going to use a laptop. Like, I see nothing wrong with that. And obviously, not every band has that kind of sound. But the artists who are taking the next step and building a career in 2022, that's kind of what you have to do. And so if you're out there and you want to just be a punk band, that's fine. Like, I love punk music. I go to local shows. But don't expect to be the next big thing. Like, that's just part of having realistic expectations. If you want to be the next big thing, which is still a very, very, very slim chance, like, the odds are so stacked against you, you have to put on the best show possible. You have to, in the studio, figure out, okay, this is what we want to sound like. This is what people like right now, so let's kind of incorporate some of those elements. And then, how are we going to pull this off live? If your song in the studio sounds amazing and you have all these string sections and piano and blah, 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 either you need to take the whole band with you and do that, or you need to backtrack it. Because if people go to the show and they hear just like a weak rock band, they're going to be disappointed. They're going to say, that's not the song I fell in love with on the CD
what's
or
on the radio
streaming.
right now.
Right.
Yep.
So, yeah, use the tools that are available to you, whether it's backtracking, the example that I used, or anything else. Like, it's just use those tools and don't be afraid to invest. I've seen so many artists who make really incredible music and they say, oh, well, we can't spend $300 to make t-shirts. It's like, but you need to sell like what, 15 of those shirts to break even? So make 30 shirts, sell 15, you broke even. Sell 30, get 60 now. Like, you just keep that cycle going. And like, yeah, I know some people have money problems, but if you want to make this a career, you have to view it as a business, and that means investing in it. Right. And if you're not going to invest in it, then you're not going to go anywhere. No one's going to say, hey, here's 100 shirts, have fun. Like, that doesn't happen. So that's really frustrating to me because I know so many amazing artists who are stuck kind of in that rut. Here's a band pun. They're stuck in that middle class rut of thinking, hey, we don't have enough money to do this. It's like, okay, well, you bought a $5,000 Les Paul last month. Why not buy a $500 Epiphone Les Paul and put the other $2,500 into proper production for your music, merch, and like a backdrop or something?
Right.
Just think about where that money could go, because it's always the artists who say they're broke that have the most expensive guitars, like, or drums, or, whatever instrument they play. The artists with the most expensive gear at the local level are the ones who complain about not having money. I've seen that way too often.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Definitely a fact. A lot of people start out with the most expensive guitar when they're just starting out.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. James, thanks so much for coming on the show. At MadRocksXVX. And also check out the show notes for today. They're at vermonttalks.com/34.
All right. Thanks so much, Becca.
Thank
this
you.
has been really fun.
Thanks so much for listening to the end of the show. Subscribe to Vermont Talks on your favorite podcasting platform. You can find me on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, all over the web. Contact Becca at vermonttalks.com if you'd like to be interviewed or if you know someone who should be. Thanks so much to Jason Baker for creating the show music. The views and opinions expressed by the guests are those of the individuals and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Vermont Talks. Any content or statements provided by our guests are of their opinion and are not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, club, organization, company, individual, anyone, or anything. And that's what was new in the 802. Have a great day.